This is the Andre Segovia Show.
I'd like to welcome on Yossi Schmidt from the Yossi Schmidt Show onto the Andre Segovia Show. Yossi, welcome to the program. It's good to have you on. I want to toss this over to you because I want you to introduce yourself to the audience, because you and I, we connected through Parler, and I want to give a special shout out to Trinity over at Parler. This conversation wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for her connecting both of us. But for those who do not know you outside the world of Parler, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
So my name is Yossi Schmidt. I have my own podcast, the Yossi Schmidt Show. And I run Team One Supporter, which is a blog of sorts.
Yeah, and that's precisely what I wanted to ask you about, because you recently started, you recently launched like notifications for WhatsApp. This is a project that you've been working on, I saw. For Team World Support, for those I've never heard of, what kind of topics do you generally cover on the blog?
So on the blog, I do different things. On the blog, I do social media platform reviews, because I am very much of the opinion that all these alternative social media platforms, there's lots of questions, and I wrote a whole statement on my blog actually about this, because someone attacked me and said that these reviews are to collect data. I said no, they're not to collect data, but what they do is they ask the hard-hitting questions that no one's willing to ask. And you come across an article about Truth Social. It's either a hit piece or a fluff piece.
Yeah.
There's no in between. There's no actual review for the consumer, for the user. And that's where I come in. CloudHub, Jeff Rain, the former CEO and founder of CloudHub, reached out to me when I just was talking about censorship, and he asked me to check out his platform. And then I came across Parler 1.0.
Oh,
and I'm like, hey, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And then I did a comparison between the two of them, which was sort of a review. And then that is how the TWS, Team World Supporter, reviews were launched. And then other platforms started reaching out to me, asking me to review them.
Oh, good.
And then it turned into, hey, I review platforms now. Let me reach out to Getter, Parler, what else was there? Mumblet, PolitiChatter, Gab. Let me review them. And even if they don't answer, that will be part of the review. If they don't want to answer the questions, if they don't want to acknowledge that there's questions, if they don't want to acknowledge censorship, then that will be part of the review. And I'll give them a rating, but as I always do, I always encourage the readers to make their own mind up. I give the basics, I give the outline of the platform, if they follow the terms of services, how they follow their own terms of services, how they implement it, and then you make your own decision. But if you want my review, here's my review at the bottom of the thing. Now to my review. Because of this, because of the lack of transparency, because of being filled with bots, this is what my personal review of the platform is.
Yeah, and for those who might not be aware, because you put this on your bio on your X handle, and being an Orthodox Jew, you review platforms, and you mentioned one of them being Gab. And when people search up Gab, it's always like this: the people stay away from it. It's a far right anti-Semitic platform. And I saw your review of Gab, and I thought that was a very, very fair review. And you recently reposted it too, and I thought that, like, you know what, this is someone that's actually providing the most unbiased approach to platform reviews out there, because at least you're giving them all equal time of day. You're telling them not just what they're known for, but what else is there on the platform with feature set and things like that. So I think you've been, from what I've seen so far, you've been pretty honest in your reviews on platforms thus far. So especially when it comes to a platform like Gab that has a stigma that people give it. I'm on Gab too at the Andre Segovia. You can follow me there, folks. And it's just, there are just many platforms.
Let me stop you right there.
Uh-huh.
That piece on Gab was not a review. It was a statement on Gab saying the inconvenient truth about Gab. Because lots of people label them as anti-Semitic. But if you look at them, they are the most pro-free speech platform. And to ignore them because they're labeled as anti-Semitic, that is not right. You have to give them the fair light of day. Now, would I review them? If they're willing to work with me, then maybe. But back when I wrote the statement, they were putting out terrible things about Israel and Jews from the Gab account and the Gab Telegram account. And I said, I had to learn the hard way how to separate Yossi from Team Supporter. The CEO of Gab has to learn the hard way to separate him from Gab. He needs to make his own opinions from his own account. He can't tweet out his opinions about Jews. He's entitled to his opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's the beauty of free speech.
Yeah.
But don't make Gab about that, because then people are going to say Gab is anti-Semitic. No, Gab is not anti-Semitic. He might be an anti-Semite, according to your personal views, because you don't like his views. But Gab is not anti-Semitic. And I said, in the thing, if he separates himself, and if he's willing to work with me, I'd be willing to work with him on a review.
Okay, and I'm glad you provide that insight as to what a statement is versus a review on your site. So when you review platforms, this is literally the platforms themselves working with you on the review. It's not just, okay, I used it and here's what I thought of it.
So actually, I will be honest, Truth Social did not answer any of my questions. They entirely shut me down.
Wow.
One user told me I'd faster jump off a bridge and point you in the right direction for a review. One employee there.
No way. Wow.
And I said, hey, look, I have a duty. My duty has become to review platforms. You don't want to work with me? That's fine. But you need to answer X, Y, and Z. You're not going to? Fine. Here's X, Y, and Z. Here's the fact that they're refusing to work with me. Here's this, this, and this. They're filled with bots or whatever I said in the review. I don't remember the exact review. They're not working with me. Parler 1.0 did not work with me either. And again, I have nothing against John Matz, but something went on with Parler. John Matz, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Something went on. He actually went even as far as to block me on LinkedIn.
Really? Wow.
Again, John, if you're watching this, no hard feelings. I would love to know what happened, what the story is. I noticed something very interesting. When he left, or fired, or whatever the whole story was, he followed me on another platform that I was reviewing.
Interesting.
He followed 3 people. The founder of that platform, his friend, he followed me and someone else. And I felt it was unprofessional to reach out to him to ask him, hey, what were you hiding?
Yeah.
So I never actually did reach out. Now he started another social media platform called Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Maybe I will review him, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll speak to him, maybe I won't. But the case is, I never brought it up. I can tell you one thing. Parler 1.0 was definitely hiding things. And I don't know what it is. To this day.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that perspective before. I did join to the tail end of 1.0 before it was taken down after January 6, 2021. Then it was brought back under the leadership of George Farmer. I say leadership loosely because of what he did. And now it's back, 3.0. So how have you been liking the 3.0 experience at Parler?
So I don't have enough interaction because I am really trying to build up my X account, trying to grow the roundups, trying to grow the reviews, trying to grow my influence, trying to reach. I am of the opinion that be uncancelable, be all over.
Amen.
Be on every social media platform. I spoke about it in one of my podcasts. Be everywhere. That's the only solution to this war on free speech.
Yes, I agree.
But I have been focusing mainly on X, and I take that as a fault of my own, because if you're saying be uncancelable, be uncancelable, be all over. Put your opinions all over. Don't just focus on X. So it's a fault of my own.
Well, I won't, and I
Now,
won't fault you for it though. I won't fault you for it because it is where the majority of the interaction is. Even though Instagram and Facebook technically have more users than X, the interaction, engagement, and impressions on X far surpass anything that Instagram and Facebook have.
I hear you for that, but what I'm trying to say is, you asked me my opinion on Parler 3.0.
Yes.
I don't have that much interaction. Now, I can't blame Parler. I can't say that it's bots like it was by Truth Social. Because I have 700 followers all of a sudden like this on Truth Social and no interaction.
That's true.
I mean, 1 + 1 = 2. You don't got to be a genius to figure that out.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa. But Parler, I'm not that active on. I'm going to make an effort to try to be more active on there, but as of now, I'm not.
Gotcha. But when you came back, there are some people that did remember you, so and they were happy to see you active again, and that's how
Trinity.
Like I said, yes, especially Trinity. That's how technically you and I got connected there, because I didn't follow or connect with Trinity before, but these were names that I remember from the previous Parler days. But yeah, well, it's interesting to see what Parler's going to do from here on out. I love what they've done with the web interface that they recently launched with their, I guess it's update 3.0, I think they're calling it. So it's interesting to see where it goes from there, because there's some stuff happening in the background I want to see come to light finally. It's been in the works for quite a while. So exciting stuff happening at Parler for sure. And speaking about freedom of speech, and I totally agree with you about being uncancelable. Yeah, I'm across about at least 12 different social media platforms. And there's some that I was on that are no longer around. And it was sad to see because some of them had true promise. There was one called... they changed the name a few times, and at the end they were called Float or Floaty, FLOTE. I forget what else they put in there, and it was like a little sailboat. I love what they were doing. I was live streaming there. I was having interactions and things like that. But whoever was investing in it made miscalculations in investing in crypto, so it basically sunk the platform, and they never did a payout to the ones that they were supposed to do a payout. So like, oh, what a bummer. But they were trying to return as this platform that was going to be able to use more of a social media manager. And that's what's really lacking right now, because there are a lot of open source platforms. There are a lot of closed source platforms like the big dogs, like Meta. Anything from Meta is basically closed source. But there are a lot of integrations with those closed platforms, because that's how they track analytics and things like that. But what we don't have is a social media manager that can basically post to everything. Like, I like that Minds is its own thing. It's kind of its own sandbox, but at the same time, it's semi-open source. Like, because if you have a big enough account, you can mirror your tweets over to Minds, but Minds now has an integration with Nostr. So if you have your EPUB and private key, you can now post to Nostr. In my case, I have not been able to get the Nostr connection to work, so I gotta physically post to Nostr. But as the concerning as it might be that Threads is around, the mere fact that Meta is the financial backing for Threads, they've been able to surpass Blue Sky. They've been able to pass places like Minds to be able to get Threads to be working with the Fediverse. That's basically open source anything. So now when I post to Threads, it's just automatically fired off to the Fediverse. And I recently found out that I don't know which podcast distributor, it might be Podcast Index. They are directly putting it to the Fediverse now. So now my podcast is on the Fediverse, and then I have to touch anything. I just use Podcasters for Spotify, and it does everything else for me. So it has been, it's a journey to get there for small creators like us, to know what platform tools are out there. I really wish there was a one form solution. I use Buffer. That one I can post to Threads, Blue Sky, and what's the other one? Mastodon. Yeah, I use Mastodon just because to get out there, But
I do.
and then there's another one called Borden, something like that. They're the only ones that have Truth Social integration, but you definitely gotta pay to a higher account to be able to integrate to that. So I liked that. I reached out to Buffer to see if they'll do some true social integration, but they didn't. But they recently launched the Blue Sky integration, which is still pretty cool. But in all this is to be uncancelable. It does take a lot of work. That's why I say I don't blame you for trying to grow your channel where it's where all the fishes are, and that's technically X. Even though it's being censored here and being censored other places, like recently taken down in Brazil. And as we record today, the Supreme was it the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the judge.
Yes, that's the one. Because I'm like, wait a minute, isn't the judge the court? But yes, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the judge to ban X from Brazil. And the mere fact that they're threatening over $8,000 a day if anybody uses a VPN to access X as a fine, anybody using it, that's insane considering how low wages people make on a daily basis over there. It is crazy how they're trying to censor that speech. And Rumble, I don't even think Rumble's in France because of that. And I think they're being
Rumble put out a statement. Chris Pavlovsky put out a statement that he's not involved. That they shut down in France.
Yes, and that was earlier. And I think they were also that same thing happened in Brazil, or is happening in Brazil. So these attacks are happening in many places, and the only way to truly be uncancelable is to try to put your show everywhere as possible. But the downside is well, where are the people? And that's what makes it really difficult because there really, unless the people are doing the footwork themselves, it's become that much harder for the shows to be discovered without hopefully paying for some kind of ad system that will get this in front of them. But if it's not Google, if it's not Meta, then or if it's not Amazon Web Services, wow, you're really like, it's like you're really doing it on your own at that point. So that's why I totally agree with you, and I'm glad that you're doing reviews on these systems, because every time there's like a place like X that's being censored or banned, people start looking for alternatives, and a lot of people have been jumping over to Blue Sky. And I posted on Parler, I'm like, well, they're gonna regret going to Blue Sky. They should have come to Parler. So we'll see how that rollout goes out. But
we'll see if an X review comes. I'm trying to push a TWS X review.
That'd be nice.
We will see if I get one. I'm hoping.
And
again,
for you.
like I said, if there is enough of a push, sorry X, I gave you a chance. You're not answering. Here's the X review.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's fair enough, like statement or no statement, because people do need to know what X is all about. Especially right now, there's a lot of hit pieces because, of course, there are because of Elon. But the mere fact that X is not what Twitter was, and that not just the interactions and stuff, and actually standing up more for freedom of speech, but I even put out there on X, whatever X is doing now, Gab did it first. So I just threw out there because, like, hey, you guys are celebrating this, but hey, the one that paid the price first was Gab. They're not on any app store because they didn't bend the knee. In the case of Parler, they did. That's why they're on it. So yes, Parler, there's still always that concern. If it's in the app store, it's not entirely freedom of speech, but Gab isn't. But at the same time, they left. Oh my goodness, what's the thing called? There's a particular integration that it has that it will connect to like the Fediverse. It's the same code. Oh my goodness, I forget what they call it though, because for some reason Gab walked away from that to kind of close itself off from it. So that's interesting that they did. Someone brought it up. I forget what they call it.
Like I said, Gab is the most pro free speech. That statement needs to be made. People could hate on Gab from today till tomorrow. That's why the title of the statement is The Inconvenient Truth. People refuse to admit that they are the most pro-free speech, but they are. They don't bend the knee. They have their own servers. They do everything they can, and they do work with law enforcement when they need to. They don't censor people because law enforcement asks them to, but they do work with law enforcement when they need to.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That is very commendable.
Yes, I agree. And
I might have personal feelings, but as Yossi Schmidt from Teen Wolf Quarter, I need to learn how to disassociate my Judaism from my job. And again, I'm willing to work with Andrew Torba if he is willing to work with me.
Yeah, and
Put our differences aside and let's sit down and help people understand what Gap is all about.
And I totally agree. And what Gab is this year is not what it was last year, because of their stance for freedom of speech. Because they've been hit by fines by these governments and things like that. Because they wouldn't capitulate to stuff that X is standing up in Brazil for. So that's why I had posted out that whatever X is doing now, Gab did it first, and they're paying for it. Whereas in the case of X, they have a lot of funds that can back them. Gab didn't, which is why they moved to a subscription type service, or they limited some features more to subscription services now, because it just couldn't be a bunch of people just logging in without contributing to the platform financially to keep it going. The servers cost money, and when you're running it from just a basically like a small business, it takes a toll. But yeah, it's been interesting that I like that you want people to make up their own minds. And freedom of speech is the beginning of it. But I think where it becomes really difficult is the access to information when you have these big tech oligarchs controlling or gatekeeping a lot of the information flow. We've seen in real time Google and Microsoft, well, Google and Facebook mostly, erase the assassination attempt on Trump in real time, to erase any information about that, and in some cases label it fake, false information that didn't happen. And then Meta having to respond to, it was a mistake on the algorithm. Oh, interesting. It's always those kind of mistakes. And it's become harder for people to really make up their minds if they cannot get that information. What ultimately would you say is, well, let me rephrase it here. For you to do what you do in encouraging people to do it, how would you go about encouraging them in this day and age where it becomes a lot more difficult to access that information?
So that is where my other aspect of Teamwork Sport comes into play, the TWS News Roundup. People need to go, and yes, I'm going to say this, people need to go to CNN. People need to go to all these left-wing sites. And people need to go to Breitbart and Gateway Pundit and everywhere, because you need to learn how to read between the lines. You need to learn how to verify news on your own. You need to see, and also, if Meta and Google and all these people go to such lengths to shut down a story, 1 + 1 = 2, it must be that it's very verified true.
Yes.
Because just take a look.
Yeah.
I do the roundup every single day. I try it. Every Monday through Thursday, I do my TWS News Roundup. It's released on my website, and I tweet out the top 10 stories. It's like 25 stories a day, and the top 10 get tweeted out, and I also make sure, little sneak peek for the Andrew Segovia show, I am going to write a piece about crediting the actual journalists who broke the story and crediting all that. You need to give credit where credit's due.
Amen.
But my point is that I go to great lengths to tag the reporters, tag the sites, and tag. If you want to repost it, great. If you don't, then great. But I did my due diligence, and I tagged you because you are the person that broke the story.
Yes.
And wrote the story. But the thing is, you have to learn how to read between the lines.
Yeah. I think this.
And I'm not infallible. I could put a story in there that's very, very false. And you know what? If I do that, I want people to call me out and say, hey, Yossi, you say you verified that story. You didn't. This didn't happen. There was a story, I hate to be controversial, but I'm going to bring the story up. There was a story that Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro broke up. We all know this. This is not false. This is 1,000,000% true. They both confirmed it.
Yeah.
But there was an interesting story. Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens were publicly agreeing to a debate.
Yes.
Publicly. And then a story cropped up from verified sources. Keep that in mind. that Ben Shapiro was going and taking a gag order out on Candace Owens. I'm sitting there, and I want to get this story out. I want to, because I'm very pro free speech, like we spoke about beforehand.
Yeah.
But something wasn't adding up. Neither Candace nor Ben Shapiro were making any comment about it. Now, you might argue Candace was under a gag order. She can't. But Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring, if they are pro-free speech like they claim they are, they would have to come out and defend themselves if the story was true. They didn't. A week went by, and they still didn't. 2 weeks, a month. They never actually acknowledged the story. And I'm like, hey, put the brakes on over here. Why not? You're getting heat. If the story is true, you know you have to defend yourself. When what happened between them and Steven Crowder happened, they defended themselves. Anyone else, they defended themselves. They didn't touch the Candace Owens because it was a false story.
And I agree. I never heard any other update other than that that someone reported that supposedly there was a gag order, and like that's interesting. But just like that, it's like water under the bridge. Nothing ever came of it, and that's that. If there was an agreement between them to just let bygones be bygones and not talk about the whole Daily Wire controversy, I know that she hasn't technically addressed the previous employers, but the gag order thing, I definitely agree. That was. I know people wanted to make something out of it, but nothing ever came out of it.
Listen, I know that Ben's a Jew and I'm a Jew, and hey, you're defending Ben. No, I wanted to call Ben out because I'm very pro free speech. I wanted to call the Daily Wire out because I call a spade a spade. If you're doing something wrong, you're doing something wrong. And I was ready to record a video for my WhatsApp status, for my ex, I was ready to call them out. And I was thinking about how I was going to say it, what I was going to say. But I had to wait and see if it was true. When 2 weeks went by, I'm like, hey, no.
And I'm really getting a sense in this conversation that we've been having. I've really been getting a sense of your passion for freedom of speech. And I have to ask, what prompted you to, I guess in a way, be a defender of it, even if it might be a little unpopular. But what made you? Was there something that you saw that said, you know what, that's not fair, that's not true, or that's wrong, that kind of made you feel that you had to be the voice to speak up?
Well, as much as Gab would like to say that they are the first ones to bring up this issue in 2016, they aren't the ones that spent days with a daily tracker tagging Jack back in Twitter days. Back before Parag Agrawal. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult him. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I spent over 1,000 days trying to get Twitter to acknowledge that they banned someone named Ari Friedman. They refused. No one ever, and I even made a Google form for people to submit their suspension. And then, when I hit a year, I'm like, you know what, Yossi? Now's the time to make a video about it. And that's when the passion hit me. The passion where people can go ahead and shut down conservative voices because we don't like what you're saying. Hey, this is a constitutional right. Okay, so Yossi, what's your problem? Twitter's not a government entity. Really? Let's talk about the New York Post story. Let's talk about all these stories where the government, COVID. However you feel about the vaccine, look what happened with the vaccine. You questioned the vaccine, you got shut down. And when I eventually did get my Twitter accounts, Yossi S1987 and World Supporter accounts shut down, it was because I called Twitter out for banning an independent news outlet, SV News Alerts. Within a split second, both my accounts were gone.
Wow.
And then when when Elon bought X, those two accounts came back.
Wow, check that out.
But that's what happened.
Yeah, and I think everybody has like an inflection point or even a tipping point. Depends on who they are and where they are. But since 2016, you said, yeah, because I know that 2020 was definitely that point for a lot of people where more of them were either waking up or they were pushed to extremes. So it's that's the importance of what I call civil discourse. What is called civil discourse? It's important to have an access to information, because the more you censor something or somebody, the more curiosity you're gonna build as to, okay, why are their ideas so dangerous? I gotta go check them out. Because what's happening in England right now is just insanely heartbreaking. But it's like that's what happens when, for whatever reason, they're trying to control the flow of information over there. They're arresting people for wrong speech. And meanwhile, there are people that are on the Islamic side that have been rioting and attacking police and all that. They don't get as much as a slap on the wrist. So I'm like, wait, what is happening here? Yeah, England is a fallen state for sure, but it really comes down to, if we don't have that information, people cannot take action or upon it. Not even our politicians that we hope are doing the right thing. We got to hold them accountable. You even posted on Parler this morning. It's a good morning to hold everyone accountable. And yes, then that's technically what freedom of speech allows us to do.
Everyone knows one of my catchphrases is hold everyone accountable. Everyone, social media platforms, the reviews, mainstream media outlets, independent journalists, everyone, hold everyone accountable. You have a job, you must be held accountable to it. You're a politician. I don't think there's a single politician in there that actually cares about their constituents.
Mm.
I'm sorry to those that do. You're free to come on, reach out to me and tell me that you do and prove it to me, because once you get that money, you get that money, and then the lobbyists, you change your views in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Look at how you vote. You're voting against what the Constitution says.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks to see or hear like people getting the claws grabbed into them by these this political monster and things like that. But yeah, and I definitely agree on that point. But we had some other topics that I want to touch on, but I don't think it'll be a service to the audience. I think that I think you introduced yourself in a way to the audience for anybody that wants to be a free thinker out there, that anybody wants to have access to information, pertinent information, because there's a 24-hour news cycle is insane. And like, well, did you miss something? Did you not? Who's to know? But you've been doing the legwork, and some people might just see it like, oh, just a bunch of links on the pistol. No, do you know how much work it takes to just curate all that news and source it properly? That takes a lot of work. As a content creator, my hat's off to you, man, because that is not an easy thing to do, especially in this day and age. And you're
Tell me about it with the news that's inundated with the news.
The news, exactly. So I think you're definitely providing a service, and WhatsApp is definitely a place that I know that people, when you have I don't know, almost 1 billion users at least on WhatsApp, it's definitely a big reach out there to be able, well, a big ocean for you to fish at. So I want to leave the audience with this. Where can they tune into your stuff? Like, or you can give us your website, how they can sign up for your newsletter, you got one, and things like that, and where they can follow you on social media.
Everything is on teamworksporter.com/blog. The reviews, more incoming, hopefully. My podcast, when it returns, will be linked in every blog post that will be there. Statements come as necessary. My statement on Gab, my statement on the necessity of a independent free speech review, platform review, or whatever. Everything is on the website. You can follow me on X. You can follow me all over. Like I said, I'm at Yossi Show on almost every single platform, besides for CloudHub, where I'm at TWS because I had a personal relationship with the CEO and founder. May he rest in peace. It hit me hard when he passed away.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, that's it. Everything's on teammotorsport.com/blog.
All right, and for everybody that's tuning in, you already know the drill. All these links will be available on the show notes accompanying this episode at theandresegovia.com, and I'll be linking to the major social media networks that Yossi mentioned there. So I think that's a good place to leave it for the audience, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show, take some time and talk about this. I'm glad we finally connected. So once again, thank you, Trinity, because it is relevant, and it's good to know that, because I'm assuming you're significantly younger than me, that it's good to see that the torch for freedom of speech is still being carried upon, and that it matters even to a younger generation when they're really lost on their phones nowadays. They don't really care. But
tell me about it. I live on my phone all day long.
Yeah, but you do it for your work as opposed to just
I walk around with 3 phones.
Right. So people don't understand that yet, and it's definitely that's a thing. But
and you heard it here first. I might be starting to walk around with a 4th phone. But
whatever it takes. It might be a burner phone too. Just kidding.
Listen, you don't know where to come after.
I gotta do the dots here, yeah. And that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so very much for joining me. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again some other time when you have something else to plug in.
We will see. And again, teammotorsport.com/blog.